Good to go? Live? Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the NextGenVest and Department of Education Facebook Live. I'm Kelly Peeler, the founder and CEO of NextGenVest.com, the money mentor for every student. We're lucky enough to have the Secretary of Education here today, and we'll be talking about how to pay for college, the financial aid process, the FAFSA. So please be commenting below with any questions that you have throughout the whole time. We are here right now in Cardozo High School in DC. So I'll just sort of start it off by asking our great panel here to introduce themselves. So would you mind just introducing yourself briefly, and then we'll do introductions and then hear your story more broadly.
Great. So I'm John King, the Secretary of Education, which means I work for President Barack Obama and support educators all over the country in schools like Cardozo trying to do the right thing for students, and also oversee higher education and our work to support students in getting to and through college.
Hey guys, I'm a freshman. My name is Amanda. I'm a freshman at Georgetown University. I'm originally from Bronx, New York, and I got involved with NextGenVest because Kelly actually came to my high school and kind of figured out end of the year senior stuff for college. And then over the summer I got involved, and now I'm a money mentor.
Great. So as I mentioned before, I'm Kelly Peeler. I grew up in New Jersey, was lucky enough to go to Harvard, went through the process of trying to figure out how to pay for college myself, and was really sort of blown away with the process and the cost of college and how difficult it is for students. So just really quickly how NextGenVest works. You can get partnered with your own college mentor over text message who does things like help you fill out the FAFSA, find you scholarships, negotiate your tuition to and through college. So they're kind of like your buddy or personal assistant through this whole confusing process. So that's sort of the premise of why we're here today. There's been a lot of changes around the financial aid process this year. Would you mind, before we kind of dive into it, just give your broader story on how you got into education and your passion around it?
Sure. So I grew up in Brooklyn in New York City and went to New York City public schools. And when I was a kid, both my parents passed away. My mom passed away when I was 8 and my dad when I was 12. And my life could have gone in a lot of different directions. I could have gotten in a lot of trouble, I could have gone in the wrong direction, but I had great teachers who made school a place that was interesting and engaging and compelling and safe and supportive. And that saved my life. If not for the teachers I had at PS 276 in Canarsie and Mark Twain Junior High School in Coney Island, I don't think I'd be alive today. I certainly wouldn't be sitting here as the Secretary of Education. And then after my parents passed away, I moved around between schools and family members, and always it was school that was at the center. But I got in trouble a lot in high school, got kicked out of high school. So I always say to people, I'm the first Secretary of Education ever to be kicked out of high school. But I don't want to be the last, because it was important that teachers gave me another chance. You know, they could have given up on me. They could have said, here's an African-American, Latino male student in trouble in school. What chance does he have? But instead, they gave me a second chance and helped me get my life on track. And I actually also went to Harvard and had the chance to get a great education and became a teacher, taught high school social studies, and then became a principal in a middle school, and was the leader of education in New York State as the Commissioner of Education, and then came to the U.S. Education Department. The president asked me to be the secretary. And I'm only here because people intervened at the right moments in my life to help me stay on track. And that's really what this conversation is about. We want to share some ideas and some facts about the college process so that you know that college is possible, that you can afford college, you can go, you can finish. And there are lots of folks here to help you, and we want to talk about some of those resources to help all of you.
Great. So we will, and by the way, for you guys in the audience, please be thinking of questions. We're going to have a student Q&A at the end, so please be thinking of your questions for the end. But I'll just sort of start it off by that process of paying for college. So something that we get a lot of questions from students over text message are things like, I don't want to take out loans. I'm really nervous about the cost of college. Is it worth it? Am I good enough? So can you just talk about the process of the mental components of why students should consider even going to college?
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. What we know is that most good jobs today require some type of education past high school, right? Everyone in this room is going to graduate from high school, right? But you're going to need more than that to be successful in the economy. Now, that could be a career certificate, that could be a 2-year degree, it could be a 4-year degree, but we know that students who have a bachelor's degree, who have a 4-year degree, earn $1 million more over their lifetime than students who don't. So college is still the best investment you can make in yourself. Now, sometimes folks do worry, can I really afford college? Well, there's lots of support, right? There's grants, there's loans, there's scholarships. So grants, there's something called Pell Grants for families that have low income. They can get Pell Grants. Pell Grants help to pay for college. President's added significant funding to Pell Grants over the last 8 years, and that can put you a good way towards paying your tuition, certainly at public colleges. Then there's loans, and some folks think, well, it's terrible to take out a loan. It's not terrible to take out a loan. You have to be smart about it. If a loan helps you get better skills so you can get a better job, then you'll be able to pay off the loan. So you've got to just make sure you're getting a loan for the right amount, that you're getting a degree that's going to help you get a good job. But loans can make a lot of sense, and the government has done a lot of work over the last few years to make it easier for people to manage their loans. So you can actually cap how much of your income goes to your federal loans at 10% of your income to make sure that how much you're paying is a reasonable amount of your earnings. And then the third piece is scholarships, and lots of schools offer scholarships, foundations offer scholarships. You've got to apply for all of those things. The place to start is with something called the FAFSA. How many students have heard of the FAFSA? Okay, that's a little bit worrisome, so now you're all going to hear about it. So it's the free application for federal student aid. When you go to the FAFSA at studentaid.gov, you can get a link to the FAFSA. When you go to the FAFSA, it's an application that you fill out. It's the first step to get financial aid from the federal government, from universities. Right? It's the first step in the financial aid process. Everybody should fill it out. And we've tried to make it much easier to fill out, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we help students over text message is just the broad awareness of what the FAFSA is. We kind of say our money mentors call it the holy grail for accessing financing for college. So can you talk about the major changes that happened to the FAFSA this year?
Yeah, so 2 things we did to try and make the FAFSA easier for folks. One is we moved up the date. So how many seniors do we have? Okay, so all the seniors, you should already have filled out the FAFSA. If you didn't fill it out already, go home tonight and do it. How many juniors do we have? Okay, so you'll be able to start filling out the FAFSA for college in October. We moved up the date that you can start to complete the FAFSA. It used to be in January. We moved it up to October so that families and students could get earlier information about how much financial aid they're going to get from their school. The other thing we did that makes it much easier to fill out and faster is made it so that if you have your parents' information, like their name and social security number, you can get their information from their tax return, download it directly into the form, so you don't have to find the actual tax return, you don't have to find a bunch of paperwork, you can just go directly to the IRS, get their information from their last tax return, and have it in the FAFSA. We think it's cut down the FAFSA time very significantly. Most people can finish somewhere between half an hour and an hour. Right? So it's we've tried to make it more reasonable. We also made it possible. You used to have to do the new year's taxes, and so people would put it off until they'd already done their taxes. You're actually using your prior year taxes now. And so you're just downloading the information directly from the IRS, trying to make it as simple as possible.
So again, so Amanda is one of our money mentors, and so just to reorient the conversation as well, please be asking questions down in the comments of the Facebook Live if you have them for Secretary King. But one of the big questions that we get a lot with students, especially, they like to procrastinate the FAFSA. And they do because there's tax forms, there's all these big words. So what money mentors like Amanda try to do over text message is nudge students to get organized early with all their documents, put them in one place, get them in a secure area so that everyone in your family is sort of on the same page. So can you just talk a little bit about why getting your FAFSA in earlier, or like now, rather than procrastinating, is overall a better idea for students?
Yeah, the key thing is that when you submit the FAFSA, you can get scholarships, you can get grants, you can get money from the university, but you're competing with other people who are also turning in the form, right? So every day that you let pass, that means other people are turning in the form and they're getting those grants, those scholarships. There's going to be less money left for those who fill it in last. So I know it's tempting to procrastinate, but this is the kind of thing you really should do as soon as it becomes available. So for the juniors, you should be planning to do it on October 1st. For the seniors, again, you got to go home and do it tonight.
And for a little bit of incentive, we do kind of some competitions to hopefully make that a little bit easier to do. So for some of NextGenVest users, we send Domino's pizza to them as a little bit of a treat. So, nice. So anyway, we'll kind of go back and forth with that. But Amanda, as a college student, can you just ask a few questions around some top of mind concerns for college students who have taken out loans already?
Right. So I, as a student, have taken out loans for this year and probably for the next years coming. And I know there's the income-based repayment. So could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the key with income-based repayment is it's designed so that you can cap how much you're paying, right? So you can cap how much you're paying at a maximum of 10% of your income. There are some different types of plans, and students really have to go on SUNAID.gov to figure out which plan is right for them. But that ability...
Just to stop you really quickly, because I know there would be questions. When you mean income-based, like, can you even talk about, like, what is income?
Sure. So you have a salary that you make at your job, right? Taxes get taken out. And income-based repayment basically bases how much you're going to pay based on your salary. So if you're earning $50,000 a year, how much you're going to have to pay on your income is 10% of that salary. And the goal there is to make sure that people can stay on top of their student loans. We also have something called public service loan forgiveness. So if folks choose a career as a teacher or a nurse or working for a nonprofit, helping to do community service, and they're in that career for 10 years and they're making their loan payments for 10 years, they can get loan forgiveness at the end of that and get rid of some of their debt that they have. So we try to make it, again, as simple as possible.
Anyone, just out of curiosity, anyone in the audience thinking about going into teaching or working for a nonprofit in the future, counseling, anything like that? Show of hands. A few of you, one or two. So those are programs that are sort of incentives for people who are doing amazing work to have a little bit of loan forgiveness after college graduation. So before we even get there, though, can you talk a little bit about the process of thinking about taking loans? So what we find, our money mentors over text message at NextGenVest, we find a lot of students are just generally confused of all the different buckets that money can come from. Yep. So can you just sort of walk through, you did a kind of amazing overview in the beginning, but all the different financing options for a student who's a current senior.
Yeah. So there are really two categories, right? There's federal loans and then there's private loans. Let me focus on the federal loans. The federal loans are the part of your borrowing that you could use income-based repayment to pay back, right? The key thing that you want to figure out is how do you minimize the amount of debt that you get based on what you expect to earn, right? And so I had a friend when I was in law school who would always describe the latte problem, which is that if you if you go to Starbucks and you get a latte every day, right, that adds up over time. And if the way you're paying for that latte is by borrowing, right, that's going to add interest. Every year is going to get added to that. And over your lifetime, you're going to pay a lot more for that latte. And so you got to make good choices while you're in college about what you spend so that you manage how much you're borrowing. Now, for many students, the combination of Pell Grants and federal loans will be enough to help them pay for what they need. But for some students, they will also need private loans, particularly students who go on to graduate school often will need private loans. And those you can't use income-driven repayment, and so you got to be really careful about how you make those choices.
And what's the difference between federal, so meaning federal loans from the government, and private loans? How are they differ?
Yeah. So a private loan is from a bank, right? And so with federal loans, we have a process to try to keep the interest rate manageable. We have a process to help you with repayment through income-driven repayment. That's not true for private loans, and so you have to be really careful about what private loans you take. Now, again, it might make sense. If you're going, in order to get a law degree, let's say, it may make sense to have private loans because you're going to make a lot of money as a lawyer, and you're going to be able to pay it back. But you've got to make good decisions about that.
Great. So just kind of moving on a little bit, for the seniors in the room, have any of you guys gotten into college yet? Some of you guys, yeah? Where have you gone into college? I'm putting you on a spot. Where? That's great. That's amazing. So what will happen later on this spring for all the seniors in the room is that you'll get what's called a financial aid package, which comes in the form of a letter. And so we at NextGenVest Money Mentors help students understand all the different line items on their financial aid package, which is essentially like your tuition bill. So just really quickly, what's listed on your financial aid package are things like federal loans, Pell Grants, scholarships. So just by way of hands for the audience, do you have to pay back grants? No. Do you have to pay back loans? Yes. So can you just, a little bit of an overview around what students should be looking out towards when they get their financial aid package, especially because they're going to get different ones from different colleges?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you want to look at is how much is the college asking you to take out in loans versus how much is the college providing, both with the grants that you're entitled to, but then also with scholarships from the college. And you'll want to pay close attention to those loans because, again, you've got to plan how you're going to use your income to pay that back over time. Right? The other thing you need to think about is what's my likely earning level going to be when I graduate from this school or when I graduate from this program. And we actually have a tool to help think about that called the College Scorecard. And on the College Scorecard, which you can find at ed.gov, we have information for every college about the level of earnings of students who graduate from that college, just to help you think about what your likely ability to repay your loans will be.
That's great. So Amanda's going to ask a question, but in the meantime, we're going to be taking some questions from Facebook in a second if people are asking them. So please make sure to ask a few questions, whether it's about college or financial aid or loans, in the comments. And then we're also going to be having a few students ask questions, so if you could gear up with your questions. But Amanda, do you want to go off of that?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, is there a penalty for making a late payment for your loan?
Yeah, you have to be really careful about making sure that you make your payments on time. And when you have loans, you have something called loan servicer, which can help you figure out, the loan servicer can help you figure out if you should opt for an income-driven repayment plan, if you should try to change your payment plan because you're going through, let's say you're going through a financial crisis in your family. There are some options where you can get a period of time where you don't have to pay, and your loan servicer can help with all of those decisions.
So we're going to take questions in 1 second, but just off that point, we see a lot of students get their financial aid packages from the university. So it's senior spring, everyone's getting into college, it's amazing. They get all these letters, acceptances, they get all the financial aid packages. And then we find some other students who haven't submitted their FAFSA, so they get their financial aid packages later in the summer, and then they figure out that they're like $2,000 to $3,000 short, and they have 2 weeks to go to school, and that's when they're texting us panicked, like, oh my gosh, where am I going to find $2,000? What would you kind of say as it relates back to, again, submitting your FAFSA to avoid that whole situation?
It's another reason, submit the FAFSA early. Another reason, juniors plan to do it on October 1st. Seniors, go home and do it today if you haven't. The other thing is to talk to the financial aid officer at the school that you want to go to and explain your situation. And sometimes the financial aid officer realizes that there's some additional aid, some additional scholarship that you're eligible for. So getting to know that financial aid officer is helpful. Also asking for advice from folks who've navigated the college process before, from your school counselor.
Like Amanda.
Folks like Amanda, a mentor like Amanda, asking them to help you go through those financial aid packages and figure out what makes the most sense for you.
Great. So can we take a few questions from Facebook or from students? Do we have the mic over there? Oh, sorry, the mic's over there. And if you wouldn't mind just saying your name and your grade year?
Sure.
And you can say loud. Is it working? Yeah.
Oh.
Just loud.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ayana Morgan, and I'm in the 11th grade. I was wondering, is there any more advice you can give us on how to pay college loans quickly?
So the question, just to repeat it, is a junior asking, is there any general advice on how to pay loans quickly?
Yeah. I mean, I think the key thing to be thinking about now is how to minimize, have as small a loan number as makes sense for you. And so some things to think about if you're taking, when you get to college, sometimes students take less than the number of credits they should in order to graduate on time. But if you don't graduate on time, if you add an extra year at the end, that can add a lot to the cost of college. You're likely to add a lot to your overall loan total. So you want to make sure that you're taking 15 credits or more per semester so you stay on track to graduate on time. That's one way to keep that loan number down. Another is figuring out what you're going to do in the summer, right? Summer after senior year, before you get to college, your college summers. Think about how you use that as an opportunity to earn money so you can pay for your books or other costs of living so you don't have to borrow that money. And then once you graduate, figuring out when you're taking that first job, figuring out what your actual loan payments are going to be and making sure that that first job is going to help you pay back those loans. And then if you have a way to pay your loans earlier, that may make sense in order to keep from having to pay the interest over time. Amanda, what would you add to that? You must be thinking about this.
Yeah, I am. It's also helpful to consider that FAFSA is something you do every year. So the amount of loans that you take out, let's say freshman year, isn't the amount of loans that you'll have to be taking out every year. So you can start out with X amount of loans freshman year, and throughout freshman year you can see like, okay, I can get this job and save up and then pay for, tuition next year and not have to pay so much. And also in addition to the amount of credits you take, some students will actually consider taking credits in the summer just so that they graduate maybe a semester earlier because tuition is charged on semester basis. So even alleviating that tuition for that semester does do a lot. So I would also suggest that. And also, there are scholarships that you can apply to while in college, so you don't have to wait till you're a senior in high school to apply to these scholarships. A lot of organizations will allow, seniors, sophomores, juniors to apply to these scholarships, so you can also apply that to the tuition that you would have to pay afterward.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, sorry to interrupt, but that's one of the things that you help students figure out throughout the year over text message, right? Is actually finding those scholarships, not even for juniors in high school, to start thinking about applying to scholarships, positioning yourself for those scholarships, whether it's need-based or merit-based scholarships, and then texting that to them. So it's kind of a continual process, right?
Right, and if you think about scholarships, if you think about the Gates Millennial Scholarship that opens out in January, you have to write 8 essays for that. And in the midst of senior year, that can be chaotic, and you might be too burnt out to even think about writing 8 more essays. But it's really important that you start thinking about this because that scholarship also covers tuition for all 4 years. So it's really important that you get all of these things, organized, because though there are scholarships that you don't have to write an essay for, they might give you less than the amount of another scholarship, which you have to, write extensively for.
One other thing to think about that you can do in high school is AP classes, right? Advanced placement classes. A lot of colleges will accept a good score on the AP exam and that AP credit in exchange for a college course. That actually helped me graduate early, was that I had taken a lot of AP classes in high school.
Great. Can we take the next question?
Hi, my name is Jordan Salvador. I'm in the 11th grade. And my question is, were finance a major factor for you when you chose your college?
Let me start with you, Amanda.
So yes, it was. I was actually choosing between Georgetown and another university that was willing to cover all of my expenses. But I thought to myself that I would be much more happier at Georgetown and I would sacrifice having these loans, and that's a decision I made. Also thinking about what I wanted to do after college. I want to get into, finance, and finance people, generally their first job after college is, a decent salary, so I would be able to pay that back. So it's also just, give and take. So are you willing to pay more for college, knowing that you would be happier there? But then also recognizing that, you have to pay for this. You have to pay for the happiness that you want to do. And if you really believe that your college will set you up for the rest of your life in terms of your mental growth, your career growth, I think it's definitely worth it. And that's kind of the path I chose.
Yeah, the thing I would add to that, so after college, I got a master's in teaching and then went to law school and then got a doctorate in education. So I've spent a lot of time in school. I'm still paying my loans, but it's turned out pretty well, right? It's because I have those degrees, because I pursued that education, that I'm able to have the job that I do and to be Secretary of Education, right? So that's one of the reasons I wanted to emphasize that having loans isn't by definition a bad thing. It can actually be a good thing if it makes sense for how you're thinking about your career and paying for your education.
The last thing I would say as well is that a lot of students are really intimidated to apply to top schools like Ivy League schools because they just think it's so expensive, but a lot of colleges actually have really great financial aid programs. So I'd encourage all of you guys to really apply to all the best colleges that you think, in addition to the ones that are safety and match schools for you, because you never know if you might get a really amazing financial aid package to that school. Can we take maybe one or two questions from students? So, yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Marina Hatziga, and does the cost of a school equal the quality of the degree?
No. That's an excellent question.
It's a very philosophical question,
Yeah.
actually.
Right? The cost of the school and the quality of the degree may be associated or maybe not. And there are some schools that charge a lot, and their students actually don't do that well after they graduate and don't get very good jobs. And it's one of the reasons we created the college scorecard, so that students could see which colleges do a good job helping students graduate, helping students get a good level of earnings after they graduate, helping students to be able to manage their debt after they leave school. So you've really got to look at, is this the right school for me? Do they have the programs that I want? And do the folks who graduate from that program get the kinds of jobs that I want to have? And you've also got to visit the school and see if it's the kind of community you want to be a part of. And you got to keep in mind that as we were just talking about some of the Ivy League schools, some of the schools that are very expensive actually provide a lot of aid and scholarships, and so the actual price for students isn't nearly as expensive as you might think. There's a tool, if you Google it, called Pell Abacus, which helps you, if you put in information about the size of your family and whether or not you get free or reduced price lunch, it helps you figure out what your actual cost would be at different schools, and that might be very different from the sticker price, the price that you might find just in the catalog.
This is a question we ask ourselves at Georgetown all the time, just because Georgetown has such a hefty price tag. I mean, the tuition could mean anything, right? It could mean the cost of living in a specific state, the amount of taxes or how much it costs for that institution to run. If you think about the facilities that are used, a lot of universities tend to cost more just because it's more expensive and it focuses on a lot of other areas. But I wouldn't necessarily look at tuition and kind of judge it based off that. I would agree with Secretary King in saying that you have to look at the programs and also think about, if this college is expensive, there are also students that are paying full price for that are able to afford it, and that kind of helps with financial aid, because that covers some of that money goes into financial aid. And also thinking about, do alums participate in giving back to your institution? Because a lot of donations that go to the university go to things like scholarships, a lot of funding that institutions can't do on their own with tuition. So I think that's another factor you should think about when choosing colleges.
And just the last thing I would say to answer your question is that we at NextGenVest, we really train our money mentors who are college students who can help you think about weighing those different options. If you want like a real college student perspective, 11 p.m. on a Sunday, to really do two things. One is to treat the cost of college seriously and to actually have a plan. So not to be intimidated and say like, I can't go to college, but to just like come up with a plan, and your money mentor can actually really help you do that. But the second is really to be a consumer of your education and to think about just like you're buying a burrito or a car, like you are going to have to pay this thing off, and so you should sort of advocate for yourself, whether it's talking to your financial aid office, whether it's fully understanding the line items of the different costs. Like you should be a consumer of your education, because ultimately you're going to have some responsibility of doing that. So we hope to, in addition to things like the college scorecard, support you through that whole decision-making process, which I know is super scary and very overwhelming, but hopefully amazing students like Amanda can be helping you nights and weekends on Snapchat and on text message. But anyway, I think that that's pretty much it. So thank you. Oh, do we have one more question? I think we have one more question from Facebook. Do you want to just ask that?
We're actually
Awesome.
I want to give a shout out to our friends at Federal Student Aid. They also have social media accounts. So if you think of questions later and you want to go into social media on Facebook, they're in there responding to a lot of questions right now. So if you're like shy and don't want to ask it here, go on Facebook or on Twitter. Their handle is @FAFSA. They have a lot of great information. Can we just do one more question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it says, what advice would you have for students that may have trouble filling out the FAFSA? For example, if their parents are undocumented or in jail, or they're having a hard time getting access to their tax forms.
Yeah. So for those folks, it's really important to ask for help from FAFSA. So you can do the FAFSA.gov, as you said. You can go to the website and find answers there. You can go to the @FAFSA on Twitter. You can go to the studentaid.gov website. But there's information for some students. Depending on your parent's status, you may be able to be independent from your parents, and so you may not need their tax returns. But that's the kind of question that we can answer for students if they reach out to us. There's also a phone number that you can use that you can find at FAFSA.gov.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Secretary King and Cardozo High School, for hosting us. And again, if you have additional questions, we'll still be answering questions in the Facebook comments. But check out NextGenVest.com if you want a money mentor, someone like Amanda, to help you over text message. And definitely go submit your FAFSA. So thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.